Welcome to another episode of Do I Need a Reason? Today's episode, we dive into the supernatural mind behind the Goosebumps series. In the bustling city of Columbus, Ohio, it is the year 1943, and a child was born by the name of Robert Lawrence Stine. Stine began writing stories at the age of 9, using an old typewriter he found. He initially made up jokes and humored stories, not the spine-tingling sensations that later made him famous. Stine's father worked as a shipping clerk in a warehouse, and his mother stayed home and looked after young Robert and his two siblings. Stine has described himself as a very fearful child and said that his mother gave him one of his first serious frights by reading Pinocchio. Stine stated that the original Pinocchio is terrifying. He goes to sleep with his feet on the stove and burns his feet off. At the Ohio State University, Stine remained focused on the lighter side of life. He edited the school's humor magazine, The Sundial, for several years. After graduating in the mid-1960s, he moved to New York City. In New York, Stine worked as a writer and editor. He eventually landed a position at Scholastic Inc., working on children's magazines. Stine launched his first horror book series for young adults, Fear Street, in 1989, described as Where Your Worst Nightmares Live. The series explored the dark misadventures of students at Shadyside High School. Fear Street grew to include roughly 100 novels, eventually selling more than 80 million copies. In 1992, Stine started taking younger readers on their own thrill ride with the Goosebumps series. These books, which he produced through his wife Jane's Parachute Press book packaging company, targeted the tween market. The first title, Welcome to the Dead House, was quickly followed by more novels. Goosebumps soon became a literary phenomenon. The books became bestsellers in the United States and abroad, and were eventually translated into 16 different languages. Goosebumps was turned into a television series as well. The Goosebumps series falls under the children's fiction, horror, and thriller genres, although Stine characterizes the series as scary books that are also funny. The primary protagonists of Goosebumps stories are often situated in a remote location or somehow isolated from typical societal convention. This can range anywhere from comfortable suburban areas to boarding schools, foreign villages, or even campsites. The books are mostly written in first-person narrative, often concluding with twist endings. They contain surreal horror with characters encountering the strange and supernatural. The author has plot devices that he follows throughout his Goosebumps books. Stine says he does not have death in any of his stories, and the children in his novel are never put into situations that would be considered too serious. He attributed the success of his books to the absence of drugs, depravity, and violence. The books and characters in the series were inspired by books and films. For example, the character Slappy the Dummy was inspired by the literary classic The Adventures of Pinocchio. Some of Stine's ideas for the books also came from real life. Stine got the idea for the book The Haunted Mask after his son Matt had a Halloween mask that he had trouble getting off. Stine also includes his childhood fears to help him write his books. The author says, "Luckily I have a great memory. As I write a story, I can remember what it feels like to be afraid and panicky." Stine states that he often thinks of a title to the novel first, then lets the title lead him to the story. Two common themes in the series are children triumphing over evil and children facing horrid or frightening situations and using their own wit and imagination to escape them. Stine does not attempt to incorporate moral lessons into his novels and says his books are strictly reading motivation. So after learning what makes the creepy mind of Stine tick, we should ask ourselves, did he really need a reason?